Hello, I'm Kevin Berger. Talking about adoption to high school students can quickly become complicated because the subject matter often can take on political or religious overtones. A Minnesota nonprofit organization is working to change that by bringing accurate and objective information to schools. Kate Gillen is board chair of the Adoption Option Council of Minnesota, and she joins us for this segment of Newsmakers to tell us more. Thanks for being here, Kate.
Thank you so much for having us.
Can you explain the mission of the Adoption Option of Minnesota?
Sure. So the Adoption Option Council of Minnesota is really dedicated to dismantling myths and opening hearts to adoption. We provide affirmation to those who have chosen adoption for their children. We also provide grants and scholarships for birth parents, as well as really, like I said, just dismantling myths and providing accurate information.
How did you get involved with the organization?
I actually started as a volunteer speaker, so kind of what we'll touch on today are speakers panels that go into high school classrooms. I wanted to share my own personal story of being a birth parent and choosing adoption for my son, so I contacted the organization and got involved speaking in high school classrooms.
Explain how you go into classrooms and talk about adoption. What's that program like?
So our Adoption Option Speakers panel goes into high school classrooms. We have a panel that can range from having birth parents, adoptive parents, adults who are adopted themselves, going into classrooms, just sharing their stories of adoption, hoping to just provide an accurate picture of what adoption looks like today and how much it's changed over the years.
Why is that necessary?
You know, I think going into classrooms and talking about adoption, it's kind of multidimensional for us. It really shows that adoption is a loving option. So if the students or any of their friends are ever faced with an unplanned pregnancy, they know that this is an option to consider. I think it's also beneficial for students who are adopted themselves. I think sometimes they can feel misunderstood or very alone. So we want to just go in and talk about adoption as a loving thing.
You mentioned that adoption has changed and is changing. How is it different than it once was?
You know, most domestic infant adoptions now that are taking place are very open. I think that wasn't always the case. A lot of adoptions in the past were very closed, and now there's all sorts of identifying information that's shared. There's oftentimes visits that are taking place between the birth parents and the adoptive families, and that's a huge shift from the way adoption used to be.
Tell me about the schools that you've been to. How many have you gone and presented with some of these options that you discuss?
So in the last year, since last October, we've reached about 4,000 students with our message. We've been into probably about 100 classrooms in the last year, just sharing our message of adoption.
And what kind of classrooms are hearing this?
You know, typically we're going into health classes. Some schools offer a child development class that we'll go into. Many schools refer to it now as their FACS class, but it's usually in that health or child development classroom.
And you say part of what you're doing is dispelling myths. What are the myths of adoption that young people might hold?
You know, we offer a pre-survey before we go into the schools, and oftentimes the negative language that we see being used by students and even just their perceptions of it being a very selfish choice or that there's money involved, it is really something that we want to kind of shift their views on. And we're seeing that through those the post surveys after we go in and speak. Their opinions have changed. 83% of students from those surveys say that it was well worth their time and that they now have a much more positive view of adoption.
Kate Gillen, keep up the good work, and thank you so much for joining us today to share the work that you're doing. If you would like to learn more about the Adoption Option Council of Minnesota, if you're an educator and would like to learn about how to get one of their school presentations in your classroom, the website is adoptionoptionmn.org. And that's it for this edition of Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Kevin Berger. Thanks for watching.